Welcome to the Land to Lots podcast, powered by Launch Development Finance Advisors. And now your host, Carter Froelich.
Hey, welcome back everyone to the launch sequence, or what we also like to refer to as create once and deliver everywhere. If you didn't hear the first episode related to the planning stage of the launch sequence, I encourage you to go back and listen to that. But with that, we're going to get into the remaining two segments of the launch sequence: implementation and management. The second stage is that of the implementation of the financing plan. And really, that the implementation of the financing plan is nothing more than implementing that which was previously planned and agreed to as part of our finance plan negotiations or discussions. And the thing that we have found is when we're beginning to move forward with a jurisdiction's city staff, and at this point, more city staff members are coming in to the discussion. The city is beginning to bring their city attorney, their financial advisors, their underwriters, their bond attorneys into the mix. And what we have found, if somebody is not paying attention, that which was planned is not that which gets implemented. So there are a lot of different potential implementation steps. What I'd like to kind of walk through is the big picture so they have a feel for what's involved in the implementation stage. But the implementation stage is documenting and memorializing that which was planned. And how do we do that? Well, if we're in the annexation, we've decided that we're going to annex into the city. We may be preparing a pre-annexation and development agreement, and we want to load up that pre-annexation and development agreement, or I'm going to refer to it as a PADA, with very favorable financing language. And as part of that financing language, we are going to be writing in that the city will establish, and here again, I know that I'm a recovering CPA, but the attorneys are going to cringe when I say the city shall establish, because we can't force cities into a legislative action. However, the way that I look at it very simplistically is if we're agreeing to annex into the city, then we need to know that if we're annexing, the city is going to be providing us the financing as outlined in the pre-annexation and development agreement. And there's some other mechanisms that we use to claw back, if you will, for lack of a better term, if the city doesn't issue debt when we need them to issue the debt, provided that they are in control of the district. If we're in control of the district, then it's not an issue. And here again, different districts, different parts of the country have different rules, but obviously we're writing as part of our pre-annexation and development agreement to that specific state. And what we're trying to do as part of the pre-annexation and development agreement, or the development agreement, is to create certainty on the part of the developer, meaning that the city, the agency, the county will do certain things as outlined in the document when asked. And then also creating flexibility, meaning we've included salient deal points within the pre-annexation and development agreement that allow us to make decisions as it relates to the financing that we don't need to go back and get permission from the city to do, because we've already agreed to that in the development agreement and the pre-annexation and development agreement. So once, that would be the perfect world of how we're beginning to implement this. What we have found is, during the annexation process and the development agreement process, is that cities are more focused on other issues other than financing. And so we're able to really load up the document with favorable, flexible financing language to allow us to accomplish our vision, meaning, what we had done during our planning stage, so that once it becomes time to form the district and we're getting into the district financing agreements, if there ever is an issue, saying with one of the city's consultants saying, hey, you can't do that, we expect you to do a 3-to-1 value to lien ratio, we can point them back to the pre-annexation and development agreement, where the development agreement said, well, we understand that the 3-to-1 is your policy. However, you agreed as part of our pre-annexation and development agreement to a 1-to-1 value to lien ratio, provided we buy our own bonds, or a 2-to-1, or whatever it may be. But that's why it's so critical that as early as we can in the process, we're loading up our agreements with very favorable financing language. So once we have our pre-annexation and development agreement, or development agreement, and we're moving forward, then we're forming the district or districts that was planned during our planning stage, and we're implementing all of those salient deal points that we came up in our planning stage, and that ultimately made their way, hopefully, into some sort of development agreement. So we're getting our district formed, we're doing our district financing agreements, and we're going through and making sure that those district financing agreements are lining up with what we have planned. Now, the thing that I have found is, because every one of our districts that we're planning is a handcrafted financing, it's not off the shelf. It's custom made for our client based upon the DOS conversation we had previously, based upon the financing plan. And we have often found that a lot of times jurisdictions will say, hey, here's the last district we did, okay? We're just going to change the names and the new legal description, and this is the one you're going to use. And we're saying, time out, that's not accurate. We have already agreed to a structure. We need to make sure that the financing structure that we agreed to is in all of the district financing agreements and the bond indenture and all of those kind of things. And the other thing that we have found is that when you're working on a transaction, the underwriters, their allegiance is to the bond buyers, and then to the cities, and then to you. Okay. And the cities obviously are, wanting to make sure that, they're making out and that the agreement is favorable to them. But we need to have somebody on the developer side, and that's typically what we do, is to make sure that all of the deal points that we've agreed to in our financing and our pro forma and our cash flow analysis and our bond sizing analysis are making their way into the financing agreements. And I can't tell you how many times that we have seen agreements given to us by cities, and a lot of times they didn't even come close to documenting our deal points, so we had to go in and change them. But they even had the wrong cities in them, because their consultants, their attorneys, had given them the wrong agreements. And so in the implementation stage is having somebody act as the traffic cop to make sure that everybody's following the rules that we've all agreed to, and that those rules of the game are getting documented in the various agreements. So now we've got, our development agreements done. We've got the district formed. We've got our district financing agreements outlined. Now we're beginning to work with other consultants to issue the bonds. And so we need to make sure that those other consultants are understanding what the rules are, meaning, Mr. Underwriter, we need to make sure these items get into the indenture. Mr. Appraiser, we need to make sure you're appraising the property under these guidelines. Mr. Assessment Engineer, we need to make sure that the assessments are being or that the costs are being allocated and the special benefit being determined under this arrangement. Because what we're really trying to do is adhere to statute, but at the end of the day, we're trying to tie back to an effective property tax rate that we had come to in our planning session. And now we need to make sure that which we're cash flowing and that which we're pro-forming is actually starting to come to fruition. And a lot of that is done in the assessment engineer, it's done in the tax levy, it's done with the appraiser, it's done in the market study. Here again, it depends on what type of district we formed and what kind of bonds we're issuing, whether they're special tax levies, whether they're ad valorem secured bonds, or whether they're special assessments, or whether they're revenue bonds. So we're making sure that all of the documents and all of the consultants are following the process and the rules that have been agreed to by the various parties. Then we're working with the developer to make sure that the official statement is coming together and that they're utilizing information related to their background, their resume, their experience, that the developer questionnaires are getting done, that the official statement is being drafted properly, that we're giving the underwriter information related to the project, to the district, to the absorption, to the builders involved, so that they're able to put together their preliminary limited offering memoranda or their preliminary offering statements, so that they can get those out to the bond market. Also, we're working with the bond counsel to make sure that the indenture and all of the related bond documents are tying back to everything that was planned. So hopefully you're starting to get the feeling that there's a lot of pieces that are moving around, and they're moving around so that we can hit, as close as possible the pro forma that we've outlined during our our planning process. And if somebody is asleep at the switch, I can guarantee you that the documents are not going to look like that which you had planned. So it's really important that somebody is watching all of the different parties, and that the documents that they're preparing adhere to all of the tenets of the deal that were planned during the initial stage of the launch sequence, or whatever sequence you want to call this. So with that, then the bonds are issued and the money is held with the trustee. And at that point, the implementation process is concluded. The third process, if you will, or third stage of the launch sequence is the management, because we've done all of our planning, we've formed the district, we've set up all of our reimbursement mechanisms, we've gone out, we've formed the district, we've issued the bonds, and everybody's left, the building. And the developer and the city or the district, kind of sit there and look at each other going, now what do we do? Well, we may have to go out and we may have to go through the public bidding process. We may not have to go through the public bidding process, but somebody needs to be able to document that, whether we went through the public bidding process or we didn't, or whether we had to pay prevailing wage or if we didn't. But somebody needs to be making sure that they're tracking all of their costs, so that once the infrastructure is completed, they can document the fact that they publicly bid the infrastructure, that they paid prevailing wage if that's necessary, that they have the contracts, that they have all the change orders, that they have all the unconditional lien releases, that they have all the canceled checks, that they have the letters of acceptance. And it's a lot of paperwork. And if you're not set up for that, you're going to make the process really, really hard for yourself. So what we like to do is make sure that everybody's set up for that they know what to do. We'll set up processes and procedures so that they can do it themselves. We do it through a system that we call the launch reimbursement system, where we track all of that and then send it in electronically to the agencies to be repaid. But the key is you have to know what you're going to do. You have to know who's going to do it, and you have to make sure you're on top of it, because if you're not, it'll create so many headaches for you down the road. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure in this instance. So the other thing you need to know is, oh, by the way, Mr. Developer, when you agreed to form the district and issue bonds, you agreed that you were going to sign up and that you were going to provide quarterly or semi-annual disclosure to the bond buyers as to how your project's going. You got to make sure you're doing that. So somebody's got to handle that. And here again, we do that a lot for our clients as well. And you also then have to make sure that your builders are providing notice to the home buying public that a district's in existence, and you need to make sure that the paperwork is being properly processed through the home sales process, and that records are being maintained. So there's a lot of different things that go on with the district management. It may be that you're actually even managing your own district, which means, guess what? When we formed the district for you, we set up a city within a city. And oh, by the way, Mr. and Mrs. Developer, you're the city managers and the city council. And the good news is that we've got you tax exempt bond financing. And the bad news is that we've got you tax exempt bond financing. Now you have to administer the district. And, somebody's got to do that. And, that's something that we can do, or we can put you in contact with others that do that. But the key thing is if somebody's got to check that box, somebody has to make sure that they're administering the district, which could mean just making sure that the tax bills are sent out, that a budget is being established, that there's public notice be going out related to the public meetings, that minutes are being taken. Or it could mean that you're actually, in addition to doing all of those things, you're actually maintaining and operating the infrastructure as well. Here again, different states, different districts, different rules. So, for a lot of the nationals or national developers, or for those entrepreneurial type developers that are moving around the United States, doing deals in Florida, Texas, Colorado, Arizona, California, all of these have different districts. All of the rules are different. And so you need to know what you're getting yourself into and what's involved on the management side. So anyway, these are things that what we like to do is to make sure that there is a process in place. We use what we call the launch sequence process. But as it relates, and the message I'm trying to convey today for the builders and the developers is create a process. And if you create it once, you're able to replicate that over and over and over. So the idea and the message I'd like to leave you with here today is create once and deliver everywhere. And for those of you that are interested, we're going to leave the launch sequence as part of our show notes here today, so that you can refer to that as a refresher. Hope you've enjoyed the episode, and look forward to chatting with you next time on Land to Lots. Thank you.
You have been listening to the Land to Lots podcast with Carter Froelich. Follow us wherever you find your podcast to never miss a new episode.